put very simply, what is the circle of fifths? The circle of fifths is just a way of organizing keys in relation to one another. And you do that through fifth intervals, right? So if you start at the top is always C, or it's typically C, which would be key of C, so all natural notes. As you go around it, you are basically just saying, what is the fifth of C? It's G. What is the fifth of G? It's D. What is the fifth of D? It's A. What is the fifth of E? Of A is E, and so on and so forth. Then B, then F sharp, C sharp, A flat, E flat, B flat, F, and then that finally comes back around to C. Why is that important? It's important because the most kind of classic resolution, really like the most typical bone stock resolution in all of music, is what we call a 5-to-1 resolution. So in the key of C, how many times have we heard that in our lives? That is as simple as a resolution can get. And so the circle of fifths lets us, first of all, visualize all of those fifth relationships between the chords. But the second thing that it does is it lets us kind of go a little bit further and explore harmony through the lens of that resolution. So let's say C to G, right? G is the fifth of C. Well, D is the fifth of G. So if we take and we do that as a chord progression. Ooh, suddenly that's very, very nice. This gives us something that we call the subdominant, dominant, and tonic relationship. If we look at it all from within the scope of one key. This also gives it, like if you were to look at a piece like Pachelbel's Canon. Pachelbel's Canon is basically just a bunch of kind of working through the circle of fifths. But when you start applying other concepts like modes, for example, and looking at things within a particular key, the circle of fifths is just a really great way to create and analyze chord progressions that resolve very nicely. Because that 5-to-1 resolution is the most basic and common and true resolution in all of music. So the circle of fifths also has a little bit to do with written music. So as you go around it here, from C, the key of C is all natural notes. Then the key of G has one sharp, F sharp. The key of D has two sharps, F sharp, and then you're also adding a C sharp, right? Key of A has 3 sharps, E has 4 sharps. Then you get to the key of B, which has 5 sharps. Key of F sharp has 6 sharps. That's the most sharps or flats you can have in a key is 6. If you go the other direction, and you go backwards to the circle of fifths, which you can also call the circle of fourths. C has all natural notes. The key of F is written with one flat. B flat. Then E flat has 2 flats, F has 1 flat, B flat has 2 flats, E flat has 3, A flat has 4, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really just like, it's a very pattern-based thing, and it's a way to look at resolutions between chords. It's a way to analyze chord progressions and how the different chords in a progression relate to one another, alongside other tools like modes. And then it also gives us the system of written keys when it comes to sheet music. The other component of the circle of fifths that you'll oftentimes see written is the relative minor keys here. And this is where it gets a little bit more into modes. So the relative minor of C is A minor. The relative minor of G is E minor. So you can start playing with those relative minors as chord substitutions, essentially. So like, for example, you could, instead of just going from G to C, you could go relative minor of all of those. So that's relative minor of G is E minor to G. Relative minor of C is A minor to C major. Perhaps that could be a chord progression that you could work with. And then all of those minors create a circle of fifths within themselves. So if you're in a tonal center or a key center of A minor, the fifth of that is always going to be E minor. And the fifth of that is always going to be B minor. The fifth of that is always going to be F sharp minor, right? So it works the same way, but you can then take those minor chords, relate them to their relative major chords, and it just kind of builds a really nice framework for you to do different things with. And there's all kinds of other sub patterns. So like if you skip one around on the circle of fifths, you get a whole tone sequence. Right? So like C to D to E to F sharp to A flat to B flat to C, like that's a whole tone sequence. That's everything going up in whole steps. All kinds of different, and then going opposite on the circle of fifths are tritones. C, F sharp major are opposite each other on the wheel. So an F sharp or G flat, of course, is the tritone of C. A flat is the tritone of D, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a way, again, of visualizing intervallic relationships and kind of relationships of resolution between the different chords and the different scales, and seeing them all fit together as you move through keys. You can go far deeper with it than that and start doing all kinds of you can jump around in different sequences to build chord progressions. And you can build all kinds of if you start using chord substitutions, you can start building 2-5-1 resolutions through all kinds of different keys. That's how a lot of jazz harmony works. But in essence, very simply explained, that is what the circle of fifths is all about.